The Mawnan Investigation, a cryptozoologist's account. Michael Thatcher, independent cryptozoologist. Field report, Owlman of Mawnan, Cornwall, England. April-May 2024. Prologue, why we do this. Before I get into the Owlman investigation, I need to explain something. People ask me all the time why I became a cryptozoologist. They assume it's for the thrill, the fame, or because I'm a believer in the paranormal. The real answer is simpler and more complicated. When Marion and I were 12 years old, we saw something that shouldn't exist attack our uncle. And when we tried to tell people what happened, nobody believed us. That night changed everything. That's why we both ended up in this field. It's also why we approach the work so differently that we can barely stand to work together. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I came to Cornwall in April 2024 to investigate reports of the Owlman, a creature that's been seen around the village of Mawnan since 1976. It would be my first international investigation and a real test of whether the growth I showed in New Jersey was genuine or just performance. What I didn't expect was that Mawnan would make me confront the very reason Marion and I do this work, and force me to finally understand why we've been at odds about it for so long. Day 1. Arrival in Cornwall. Cornwall is about as far from New Jersey as you can get while still being in the English-speaking world. The landscape is dramatic, rugged coastline, ancient stone walls, villages that have stood for 1,000 years. Mawnan is a tiny settlement near Falmouth, maybe a few hundred residents, centered around a medieval church perched on a cliff overlooking the Helford River. The church is the focal point of the Owlman legend. Most sightings have occurred in or around the churchyard, particularly near a wooded area on the grounds. The original 1976 sightings involved 2 young girls on holiday who saw a large, owl-like creature with pointed ears and red eyes hovering above the church tower. I'd arranged to stay at a bed and breakfast in the village, run by a woman named Mrs. Penrose. She was in her 70s, proper in that British way, and clearly skeptical about my purpose. "You're here about the Owlman," she said, not making it a question. "I am. I'm a cryptozoologist. I research reports of unknown animals." We've had your sort before. Usually they're disappointed, or they make up something for the tourists. I'm not here to make anything up. I'm here to document what people have actually experienced. She studied me over her glasses. "American, are you? You lot tend to be rather enthusiastic about these things." "I used to be. I'm trying to be more thoughtful now." Something in my tone must have satisfied her because she nodded. "Well, you'll want to speak with Reverend Thomas at the church. He's been here longer than anyone and has dealt with this nonsense. Begging your pardon, longer than most. Mention my name. He might talk to you." "Thank you, Mrs. Penrose. And Mr. Thatcher? The village doesn't need sensationalists. If you're going to be one of those, you can leave now and save us all the trouble." "Understood." I was already being held to a standard. Good. That's what I needed. Accountability from people who had no reason to give me the benefit of the doubt. Day 2. Reverend Thomas. I walked to St. Mawnan's Church the next morning. It's a stunning medieval structure, parts dating back to the 13th century, surrounded by an ancient graveyard with weathered headstones and gnarled trees. The location is dramatic, perched on a cliff with views of the river below and woodland creeping up close on 3 sides. If you were going to have a cryptid, this is where you'd have it. Reverend Thomas was working in the garden when I arrived. A man in his 60s with white hair and the weathered look of someone who spends significant time outdoors. I introduced myself, mentioned Mrs. Penrose, and explained my research. He wiped dirt from his hands and studied me. "Another Owlman hunter. We get a few each year." "I'm not hunting it. I'm trying to understand what people have seen and whether there's any basis in reality." "And if you find it's real? What then?" It was a test and I recognized it. Then I document it carefully and work to ensure it's protected, not exploited. He nodded slowly. "Mrs. Penrose said you might be different from the usual lot. All right, come inside. I'll tell you what I know." We sat in his small office, surrounded by books and parish records. Reverend Thomas brought out a folder thick with newspaper clippings, letters, and his own notes. RT. The Owlman sightings began in 1976, though there are older local stories about something in the woods. The first documented modern sighting was two sisters, ages 12 and 9, on holiday with their family. They were walking near the church and saw something hovering above the tower, large, gray, with wings and glowing red eyes. MT. Did you speak with them? RT. Not directly, I wasn't the vicar here then. But my predecessor documented their account. They were genuinely frightened, not playing games. A few months later, another young girl saw something similar in the woods nearby. Then more reports over the years, clustered mostly in the late 70s and early 80s. MT. And more recently? RT, a handful. A hiker in 2018 claimed to see something large with wings perched in a tree near the graveyard. Two teenagers in 2022 heard unusual sounds in the woods at dusk, described as a mix between an owl's hoot and something else, something wrong. And last year, a birdwatcher reported seeing something that didn't match any known bird species flying from the church tower toward the river. MT. What's your personal opinion? You've been here for 20 years, dealt with this phenomenon directly. RT. Long pause. I'm a man of faith, Mr. Thatcher. I believe in things that can't be easily explained or proven. But I'm also practical. I've spent many nights in and around this church, and I've never seen the Owlman. I've heard unusual sounds, owls certainly, but also things I couldn't immediately identify. Could there be something unusual in these woods? Perhaps. Is it a supernatural creature? I rather doubt it. But is it something real that people have genuinely encountered? I'm inclined to think yes. MT. Why do you think the sightings cluster around the church? RT. The church is the highest point in the area, visible from great distances. It's a landmark. If something is flying or moving through this region, it would naturally pass near here. Also, the graveyard woods are old growth, relatively undisturbed. Good habitat for wildlife, including unusual wildlife. Before I left, Reverend Thomas said something that stuck with me. Mr. Thatcher, this village is small and old. We've lived alongside mysteries for centuries. We don't need them solved or exposed, we need them respected. I hope you'll remember that. I will. I promise. Day 3. The 1976 Witnesses. Through Reverend Thomas's connections, I was able to contact one of the original 1976 witnesses, Sally Melling, née Arnold, one of the two sisters who first reported the Owlman. She was now in her 50s, living in Devon, but agreed to speak with me by phone. MT. Ms. Melling, thank you for speaking with me. I know you've told this story many times. Not as many as you'd think. After the initial fuss, I stopped talking about it. People either believed me or thought I was making it up. Neither response was particularly satisfying. MT. Tell me what you saw that day. SM. My sister and I were on holiday with our parents. We were walking near the church, playing in the graveyard, which sounds morbid, but we were children and thought it was exciting. It was late afternoon, still light, but the sun was getting low. I looked up and saw it perched on the church tower. At first I thought it was a large bird, but then I realized the size was wrong. It was huge, at least 4 feet tall, maybe more. Gray-colored, with a body that was humanoid but covered in feathers. The head was owl-like, with pointed tufts or ears, and the eyes, they were red, glowing red, looking right at us. MT. What did you do? SM. We ran. Absolutely bolted back to where our parents were. They came back with us, but by then it was gone. They thought we'd seen a large owl and let our imaginations run wild. But Mr. Thatcher, I know what I saw. I was 12, not 6. I knew the difference between an owl and something else. MT. Has the experience affected you since? I became interested in ornithology, actually. I wanted to understand birds, to see if I could find a rational explanation for what we saw. I never did. I've studied every large bird species in Britain and nothing matches what was on that tower. MT. Do you think it was real? An actual creature? I know it was real. Whether it was a biological animal, something else, or something my brain interpreted incorrectly, I can't say. But what I experienced was real. The fear was real. The memory is real. And I've never seen anything like it before or since. After the call, I sat in my room thinking about Sally Melling's experience. She'd been 12 when she saw the Owlman. Marion and I had been 12 when we saw what we saw. That age seems significant, old enough to observe accurately, young enough to be deeply affected. Interlude. August 1999. I need to tell you about that night. Not because it's directly related to the Owlman, but because it's the foundation of everything. It's why Marion and I do this work, and why we've been unable to do it together. We were 12 years old, twins obviously, on a camping trip in the Adirondacks with our parents and our Uncle Dave. He was our mother's brother, young and fun, the kind of adult who treated kids like actual people. We adored him. The campsite was remote, accessible only by hiking in several miles. Just the 5 of us, tents set up in a clearing near a stream. It was August, warm and humid, with that thick summer darkness that feels alive. We'd gone to bed around 10 p.m., Marion and I sharing a tent. Around midnight, we woke to screaming. Uncle Dave, shouting for help. Marion and I unzipped the tent and looked out. Something was attacking him. It was dark, hard to see details, but we saw enough. Something large, hunched, covered in dark fur or hair. It had Uncle Dave on the ground, and there was blood. Our father was hitting it with a flashlight, trying to drive it away. Our mother was yelling, frozen in terror. The creature turned to look at us. Marion and me, 12 years old, staring from the tent, and its eyes reflected the flashlight beam. Yellow-green, like an animal's eyes, but the shape behind them was wrong. Too tall when it stood. Too intelligent in how it moved. Then it ran. Just left, disappeared into the forest with a speed that seemed impossible for something that size. Uncle Dave survived, but barely. Deep lacerations, blood loss, trauma. The official report called it a bear attack, though the park rangers who investigated seemed uncertain. The claw marks didn't quite match bear patterns. The attack behavior was atypical. But what else could it have been? Marion and I tried to explain what we'd seen. That it wasn't a bear. That it moved wrong, looked wrong, felt wrong. Nobody would listen. We were traumatized children, they said. We'd seen a bear and our frightened minds had made it into something else. But we knew what we'd seen. And we knew that nobody believed us. Uncle Dave recovered physically but never fully mentally. He still has nightmares. He still won't go into the woods. And when Marion and I talk about cryptid research, he gets very quiet and changes the subject. That night shaped everything. Marion decided that if dangerous creatures existed, they needed to be studied carefully, understood, and managed to prevent others from being hurt. Her approach is protective, cautious, ethical. I decided that if dangerous creatures existed, they needed to be proven, documented, and exposed so that people would take them seriously. So that when someone says, "I saw something that shouldn't exist," they'd be believed. My approach was aggressive, public, validation-seeking. Same trauma, opposite conclusions. And until Cornwall, I didn't fully understand why Marion's way was right and mine was wrong. Day 4, the woods. I spent 2 days exploring the woods around St. Mawnan's Church, with permission from Reverend Thomas. The area is beautiful, old trees, thick undergrowth, rocky outcroppings. It's also excellent habitat for wildlife. I saw numerous birds, evidence of badgers and foxes, and the general signs of a healthy ecosystem. I also found something unusual. Scratch marks on several trees at heights of 8 to 10 feet. The marks were old, weathered, but distinct. Too high for most ground animals. Wrong pattern for deer or livestock, and not matching typical bird claw patterns. I photographed them, took measurements, and collected samples of bark for analysis. I also set up trail cameras in 6 locations throughout the woods, positioned to capture anything moving through the area at night. While working, I met a local man named Graham Penhallow, who was walking his dog through the woods. He was in his 40s, friendly and curious about what I was doing. "Looking for the Owlman?" he asked with a slight smile. "Researching reports. You're local. Born here, lived here my whole life. Heard about the Owlman my entire childhood. Have you ever seen it?" He hesitated. "Seen? No. Heard? Maybe. Last autumn. I was walking through here at dusk and heard something in the trees above me. A sound like wings, big wings, flapping hard. I looked up but couldn't see anything through the canopy. Then I heard a sound, like a hoot, but deeper, more resonant than any owl I know. Did you feel threatened? Not threatened exactly, more like observed, like something was watching me and deciding whether I was worth investigating further. I left fairly quickly after that. Have you told anyone else about this? Just my wife. She thinks I heard a large tawny owl and let the old stories influence my interpretation. She's probably right. But you're not certain. No, I'm not certain. After Graham left, I continued my work. The conversation reinforced something I'd learned in New Jersey. Witnesses often doubt themselves, especially when their experiences don't fit conventional explanations. They're ready to dismiss what they saw or heard as misidentification because that's easier than accepting they encountered something unknown. But doubt doesn't equal falsehood. Sometimes the most honest answer is, I don't know what I experienced, but it was unusual. Day 5. The British Cryptozoology Community. Through online connections, I'd arranged to meet with Dr. Simon Fletcher, a British cryptozoologist who'd been researching the Owlman for 15 years. We met at a pub in Falmouth, and I immediately liked him. He was thoughtful, careful, skeptical in a productive way. Dr. Fletcher, thank you for meeting. I've read your papers on the Owlman. Seth, please call me Simon. And I've heard about you, actually. Your sister Marion has quite the reputation in conservation cryptozoology circles. You know Marion? Seth. Not personally, but I followed her work. Her approach to the skunk ape investigation was exemplary. Thorough documentation with an emphasis on protection. Exactly the kind of work our field needs more of. That's good to hear. Marion and I don't work together anymore. We had a disagreement about methodology. Seth. The Mothman situation? Yes, I heard about that. Unfortunate. Though I understand you've been doing better work recently. The Jersey Devil investigation showed considerably more restraint. I was simultaneously pleased and embarrassed that my work was being discussed in British cryptozoology circles. I'm trying to do better. Learning to prioritize protection over proof. Seth, good. Now, about the Owlman, what have you learned so far? We spent 2 hours discussing the phenomenon. Simon had compiled an extensive database of sightings, analyzed the patterns, and developed several hypotheses. Misidentification. Most sightings could be explained by large owls, barn owls, tawny owls, seen in unusual circumstances or lighting. Cultural influence. The 1976 sightings created a framework that influenced later interpretations of ambiguous observations. Genuine unknown. A small percentage of sightings might represent an actual unknown species or a rare vagrant bird. The challenge, Simon explained, is that most evidence is anecdotal. We have no physical specimens, no clear photographs, nothing that would satisfy scientific peer review. But the consistency of descriptions over decades, from independent witnesses, suggests something beyond pure invention. What's your personal assessment? I think something unusual is in those woods. Whether it's an unknown species, a rare owl species, or a known bird with unusual behavior, I can't say definitively. But dismissing all the reports as hoaxes or misidentification seems intellectually lazy. What would you do if you had definitive evidence? Clear photographs, physical samples, proof. Simon considered this carefully. I'd present it to scientific communities for peer review. But I'd do so in a way that emphasized conservation and protection rather than spectacle. The last thing Mawnan needs is an influx of cryptid tourism disrupting the village and the habitat. That's exactly what my sister would say. Then your sister is sensible. Michael, can I be frank with you? Please. The American approach to cryptozoology tends toward sensationalism, finding Bigfoot dramatic reveals, entertainment over science. It's hurt the field's credibility and endangered the creatures we're trying to study. If you're genuinely trying to work more like Marion, more like the conservation-minded researchers, then you're doing the field a service. But you'll need to resist the temptation toward drama. British colleagues are watching your work. Don't disappoint us. The pressure of that was real. I wasn't just representing myself anymore. I was representing an approach to cryptozoology. The responsible approach. Marian's approach. I won't. I promise. Day 6-8, the vigil. I spent 3 nights conducting observations in the churchyard woods, using the trail cameras and direct monitoring. The nights were cold and damp. April in Cornwall is not comfortable outdoor weather, but I was determined to be thorough. Night 1. Nothing unusual. Owls hooting, regular tawny owls, foxes moving through the area. The ambient sounds of a rural night. Night 2, more of the same. I was beginning to think the Owlman was entirely mythical or long gone from the area. Night 3 changed everything. Around 11 p.m., while I was reviewing night vision footage, I heard it. A vocalization that was definitely owl-like but wrong in some fundamental way. Too deep, too resonant, with harmonics that didn't match any owl species I knew. I grabbed my camera and scanned the trees. First, I saw nothing. Then, perched on a branch about 40 feet up, I saw it. Large. Much larger than any British owl. The body was gray with what appeared to be feathers, but the structure was unusual. The head was distinctly owl-like with prominent ear tufts, but the proportions seemed off. And when it turned to look in my direction, its eyes reflected my infrared light with a reddish glow. I took photographs, keeping my movements slow and deliberate. The creature watched me for perhaps 30 seconds, then spread its wings, impressive wingspan, easily 5 feet, and launched itself from the branch, flying silently through the trees and disappearing toward the river. My hands were shaking, not just from cold or excitement, but from a memory. 12 years old, seeing something that shouldn't exist, yellow-green eyes reflecting a flashlight beam. The Owlman wasn't the same creature that attacked Uncle Dave. But the feeling was the same, encountering something real that existed outside conventional categories, something that made you question your understanding of what's possible. I understood, suddenly and completely, why Marian approached this work with such caution. Because cryptids aren't just biological curiosities. They're real entities that exist in the world, and what we do with that knowledge has consequences. Day 9, the evidence. I spent the next day reviewing footage and photographs. The images showed the creature clearly enough for analysis but not clearly enough for definitive identification. The size, proportions, and features were consistent with witnesses' descriptions, but they could potentially be a very large eagle owl, a European species, or possibly a rare vagrant of some kind. The vocalization was more interesting. I sent it to Dr. Helen Morrison at Rutgers, the same bioacoustics expert from the Jersey Devil investigation, for analysis. Her response was measured. This vocalization has characteristics of strigiformes, owls, but with unusual frequency patterns. Could potentially be a Eurasian eagle owl, which are very rare in Britain but do occasionally appear as vagrants. However, some aspects of the vocalization don't quite match. Would need more samples for definitive analysis. So, possibly a rare known species, possibly something else. Not definitive either way. I also had the trail camera footage. One camera had captured the creature flying through the frame, brief, partial, but clearly showing the size and wing structure. Good documentation, but again, not conclusive proof of something unknown. This is where the old Michael would have posted everything online with dramatic claims about definitive proof. The new Michael, the one trying to be better, had to make a different choice. I called Marian. The call. It rang 4 times before she answered. Michael. Marian. Hi. I need your advice. Silence. Then, about what? I'm in Cornwall investigating the Owlman. I've documented something, probably a rare owl species, possibly something unknown. I have photos and video and audio, and I don't know what to do with it. What do you want to do with it? The old me would post it everywhere and claim I found the Owlman. The new me knows that would probably be wrong. But I don't know what the right choice is. More silence. I could hear her thinking. Finally, describe what you saw. I told her everything, the sightings, the evidence, the ambiguity. She listened without interrupting. It sounds like you've documented something unusual, she said when I finished. Possibly a vagrant eagle owl, possibly something else. The responsible course is to work with ornithologists to determine what it is before making any public claims. That could take months, maybe years. Yes, is that a problem? The old me would say yes. The new me, I don't know. I guess not. Michael, why are you really calling me? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. I needed to hear your voice. I needed to know what you would do. I'd work with experts. I'd document carefully. I'd release only what serves the creature's welfare. You know this already. So why are you really calling? Because being here, seeing this thing in the trees, it reminded me of that night. With Uncle Dave. When we were 12. Long pause. When Marion spoke again, her voice was softer. Yeah, it reminded me too when you described it. We've never really talked about that night. About how it affected us. No, we haven't. Marion, I think I finally understand why we approach this work so differently. You wanted to protect people from what we saw. I wanted to prove that what we saw was real so people would believe us. We were both responding to the same trauma, just in opposite ways. I know. I figured that out years ago. I was waiting for you to figure it out. Why didn't you just tell me? Because you had to understand it yourself. If I just told you, you would have resisted. You needed to figure it out through your own work. I sat in the dark churchyard, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something shift. I miss working with you. I miss it too. But I'm not ready yet, Michael. You're getting better, but you're not there yet. The Owlman investigation. Don't post anything sensational. Work with Simon Fletcher and the British ornithology community. Document responsibly. Show me you can do this right even when I'm not there to hold you accountable. I will. I promise. And Michael, I'm proud of you. For calling. For asking. For trying. That's growth. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about that night in 1999, about Uncle Dave screaming, about two 12-year-olds seeing something that changed their lives, about how Marion and I had been trying to process that trauma for 25 years, and how we'd let it push us apart instead of bringing us together. But maybe we were finally finding our way back. Day 10, the decision. I met with Simon Fletcher the next morning and showed him everything I'd documented. He examined the evidence carefully, methodically, without rushing to conclusions. This is good work, he said finally. Clear documentation, careful observation. The creature could be a vagrant eagle owl. They're roughly this size and occasionally appear in Britain. But the proportions in your photographs are slightly off. The ear tufts are more pronounced. The body structure is marginally different. So what do? We write this up as a potential unknown or a rare variant. We share it with ornithological societies for expert analysis. We do not make sensational claims. We present the evidence and let experts evaluate it. That's not going to make me famous. No, it's going to make you credible. There's a difference. My sister says the same thing. Your sister is correct. Fame is temporary and often destructive. Credibility is valuable and lasting. Which do you want? The answer finally was clear. Credibility. We spent the day planning a responsible disclosure strategy. We would share the evidence with British ornithological experts for analysis. Write a measured report describing what was observed without making definitive claims. Work with local authorities to establish some habitat protection around the church woods. Release only the information necessary to support conservation without creating a tourist circus. Maintain ongoing monitoring to gather additional data. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't going to get me millions of views. But it was right. Day 11, Mrs. Penrose. Before leaving Mawnan, I had tea with Mrs. Penrose at her B&B. She'd been watching my work over the past 2 weeks, and I was curious what she thought. You're different from the others who've come here, she said, pouring tea with practiced precision. How so? The others were either true believers wanting to find proof, or skeptics wanting to debunk the stories. You seem to be genuinely interested in understanding what's actually here, without needing it to be one thing or another. I'm trying to be more open-minded. My sister taught me that not everything fits into neat categories. Your sister sounds wise. She is. Much wiser than me, though I'm trying to catch up. Mrs. Penrose smiled. The village appreciates that you've been respectful. No sneaking around at night causing disturbances. No dramatic proclamations about monsters. You've been a proper researcher. Thank you. That means a lot. Will you be back? Maybe. If there are more sightings, if the evidence warrants additional investigation. But only if the village wants me here. If you continue being as respectful as you've been, you'll be welcome. We don't mind researchers. We mind sensationalists. As I packed to leave, I thought about the difference between being welcome and being tolerated. The old Michael was often tolerated. Loud, enthusiastic, forgiven for his excesses because at least he was passionate. The new Michael was actually welcome, thoughtful, respectful, trusted to do the work right. That felt better than any viral video ever had. Day 12. Departure and reflection. I left Cornwall on a gray, misty morning that felt appropriate, mysterious without being grim, beautiful in its uncertainty. The Owlman was still in those woods, whatever it was. The mystery remained, and I was okay with that. The flight back to the US gave me time to think about everything I'd learned. About the Owlman. Something unusual exists in the Mawnan Church woods. It's likely a biological entity, possibly a rare known species, possibly something unknown. It's reclusive, nocturnal, and has coexisted with humans for decades without incident. It deserves protection regardless of whether it's classified or unclassified. About myself, I'm capable of patient, careful research. I can resist the temptation toward sensationalism. I can earn trust from skeptical communities. I'm finally understanding why Marion approaches cryptozoology the way she does. About Marion and me, we're still processing the same childhood trauma. We developed opposite coping mechanisms. Neither of us was entirely wrong, but she was more right than I was. We might be able to work together again someday, but I need to earn that. The Owlman investigation wasn't as dramatic as the Mothman or as dangerous as the Jersey Devil. But it was important in a different way. It showed me that I could do this work right even when Marion wasn't there to guide me. Even when I was in a foreign country with different cultural expectations and a community that had no reason to trust me. I'd proven to Simon Fletcher, to Mrs. Penrose, to the village of Mawnan, and most importantly to myself, that I could be the kind of cryptozoologist Marion is. Ethical, careful, protective. Maybe someday that will be enough for us to work together again. Conclusions. The Owlman of Mawnan exists. I've documented it through photographs, video, audio recordings, and direct observation. Whether it's a vagrant Eurasian eagle owl, a rare unknown owl species, or something that doesn't fit existing taxonomic categories, I cannot say definitively. What I can say, multiple credible witnesses over nearly 50 years have reported a large owl-like creature in the Mawnan area. The creature is real in the sense that something matching the descriptions exists in the church woods. It demonstrates reclusive behavior and avoids human contact. It poses no apparent threat to humans and has coexisted peacefully with the village for decades. Its habitat deserves protection regardless of its taxonomic status. Physical description based on my observations. Height: approximately 3 to 4 feet when perched. Wingspan: approximately 5 feet. Coloration: gray with lighter chest markings. Head: owl-like with prominent ear tufts. Eyes: large, reflecting reddish in infrared light. Behavior: nocturnal, uses trees for perching, silent flight. Conservation recommendations: the church woods should be protected from development and excessive human activity. Night disturbances in the area should be minimized during breeding season. Ongoing monitoring should be conducted by qualified ornithologists. Tourism should be managed to prevent habitat disruption. Any attempts at capture or close-range documentation should be prohibited. I'm working with Simon Fletcher and British ornithological societies to ensure these recommendations are implemented. This is quiet, unglamorous work. Exactly the kind of work Marion does. Exactly the kind of work that actually matters. Personal reflection. Understanding why we do this. The Owlman investigation forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding for 25 years. Why Marion and I became cryptozoologists in the first place, and why we've approached it so differently. That night in 1999, when we were 12 years old, we saw something that shouldn't exist attack someone we loved. And when we tried to tell people what really happened, nobody believed us. We were dismissed as traumatized children who'd misunderstood a bear attack. But we knew what we saw, and being disbelieved, being told that our direct observation was invalid, was almost as traumatic as witnessing the attack itself. Marion responded by deciding to protect people from these creatures through careful study and management. If dangerous cryptids exist, she reasoned, we need to understand them so we can keep people safe. Her approach is cautious because she's trying to prevent others from experiencing what Uncle Dave experienced. I responded by deciding to prove these creatures exist so that when someone says, "I saw something," they'll be believed. I became obsessive about documentation, about proof, about forcing the world to acknowledge that cryptids are real. My approach was aggressive because I was still that 12-year-old kid screaming, "I'm telling the truth," to adults who wouldn't listen. We were both right, and we were both wrong. Marion was right that protection matters more than proof. But she was wrong to keep so much evidence private that the scientific community couldn't engage with the phenomena. I was right that documentation and evidence are important. But I was wrong to prioritize proof over the welfare of the creatures I was studying. The Owlman helped me understand this. Sitting in that churchyard, seeing those reddish eyes reflecting my camera's infrared light, I felt the same visceral reaction I'd felt at 12. Something exists that shouldn't. But this time, instead of thinking, "I must prove this to everyone," I thought, "I must protect this." That shift in perspective, from proving to protecting, is what Marion has been trying to teach me for years. And it's what finally makes our eventual reconciliation possible. Because we're not trying to win the same argument anymore. We're trying to do the same work, just from slightly different angles. We can balance each other now instead of fighting each other. A letter to Marion, that I'm actually sending this time. Marion, I'm back from Cornwall. The Owlman investigation went well. I did it right. No sensational posts, no viral videos, just careful documentation and work with local researchers to protect the habitat. Simon Fletcher says I'm welcome back anytime, and Mrs. Penrose at the B&B said I'm a proper researcher. Coming from a skeptical British woman, I'm taking that as high praise. But I'm not writing to brag about doing the bare minimum of responsible fieldwork. I'm writing because being in Mawnan made me think about that night in 1999, and I finally understand something I should have understood years ago. We've been responding to the same trauma in opposite ways. You became protective because you saw what these creatures could do and wanted to prevent it from happening to others. I became aggressive about proof because I couldn't stand that nobody believed us. We were both hurt by the same event, but we let that hurt push us in different directions instead of toward each other. When I saw the Owlman in those trees, those red eyes reflecting my camera light, I felt 12 years old again. But this time, instead of thinking, "I need to prove this to everyone who didn't believe us," I thought, "I need to protect this. That's your voice in my head. That's what you've been trying to teach me." I destroyed the Mothman phenomenon because I needed validation more than I needed to do the right thing. I needed the world to see that I was right, that cryptids exist, that 12-year-old Michael wasn't crazy or lying. But seeking that validation cost me something irreplaceable, the phenomenon itself and my relationship with you. I can't undo the Mothman, but I'm trying to do better with every investigation since. The Jersey Devil, the Owlman, I'm putting the creatures first now. I'm thinking about consequences before I act. I'm being the kind of researcher you are, or at least trying to be. I know you said you're not ready to work together again. I respect that, but I want you to know that when and if you are ready, I'll be here. And I'll be someone you can trust to do this work right. Not because I'm trying to win you back, but because it's the right way to honor what we both experienced that night in the Adirondacks. Uncle Dave called me last week. First time in months. He asked how the research was going, and for the first time he actually seemed interested instead of uncomfortable. I told him about the Owlman, about working with British conservationists, about prioritizing protection. He said, "That sounds like what Marion does. You're learning from her." He's right. I am. I think about that night sometimes. Standing outside our tent, seeing something that shouldn't exist, yellow-green eyes in the darkness. I think about how you and I held hands, terrified, watching something attack Uncle Dave. How we made a pact afterward that we'd figure out what was out there, that we'd understand these creatures so nobody else would have to be that scared. We kept that pact, Marion. We just kept it in different ways. And maybe we're finally finding a way to keep it together instead of separately. When you're ready to talk about working together again, call me. Until then, I'll keep doing the work the way you taught me to do it. Carefully, ethically, with protection before proof. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Thank you for that letter after the Jersey Devil investigation. Thank you for taking my call from Cornwall. Thank you for believing I can be better, even when I've given you plenty of reasons not to. Your twin brother, Michael. P.S. I'm planning another overseas investigation later this year, possibly Australia or Southeast Asia. If you're interested, no pressure. I'd love your input on approach and methodology, even if it's just a phone call or some emails. I miss your perspective. I miss you. I sealed the letter and mailed it before I could second-guess myself. Whether Marion would respond, whether she'd consider my invitation for input, whether we'd ever work together again, all of that was uncertain. But I'd done what I could. I'd shown growth, admitted fault, and extended an honest invitation. The rest was up to her. Epilogue, 3 months later. It's now August 2024, and I'm adding this final section to complete the record. I received a response from Marion 3 weeks after sending the letter. Not a long response, just a postcard with a photo of some cryptid statue. I think it was from Point Pleasant, which was either ironic or pointed, I couldn't tell. The back just said, "Michael, good work in Cornwall. Keep it up. When you do the Australia investigation, call me first. We should talk through approach. Not working together yet, but consulting. Baby steps. Baby steps. I could work with that. I've been developing the Australia plan, investigating reports of the Yowie in Queensland. It's Bigfoot-esque, lots of Aboriginal traditional knowledge, requires significant cultural sensitivity. Exactly the kind of investigation where Marion's input would be invaluable. I called her last week. We talked for 2 hours about methodology, community engagement, ethical considerations. It felt like old times before the Mothman, before everything went wrong. Just 2 cryptozoologists discussing how to investigate something respectfully. At the end of the call, she said, "Michael, I'm not ready to be in the field with you yet, but this consulting, talking through approach, this is good. This is progress. I'll take progress." Simon Fletcher and I published a paper on the Mawnan observations in a British ornithology journal. It's measured, careful, acknowledging what we documented while avoiding sensational claims. The response has been positive. More interest in protecting the churchwoods, some discussion of whether vagrant eagle owls are more common than previously thought, and recognition that something unusual is happening in that location. The paper won't make me famous, but it's building credibility. Mrs. Penrose sends me occasional emails with updates. The Owlman is still around, still seen occasionally by locals, still living its mysterious life in the woods. The village has established some informal guidelines about minimizing disturbance in the area, and tourism has not significantly increased. That feels like success. I think about that night in Cornwall often. Sitting in the churchyard, seeing those red eyes watching me from the darkness, feeling the weight of responsibility for what I did with that knowledge. That moment crystallized everything Marion had been trying to teach me. The creature trusted me with its presence. The village trusted me with their mystery. That trust was more valuable than any proof, any recognition, any viral moment. I'm still Michael Thatcher, the impulsive twin who rushes in where angels fear to tread. But I'm becoming someone Marion might be willing to work with again. Someone who understands that cryptozoology isn't about proving we were right that night in 1999. It's about honoring what we witnessed by protecting the creatures that still exist. Uncle Dave is doing better. We talk more now. He started asking questions about my research instead of changing the subject. Last month, he said something that stuck with me. "You and Marion are doing important work. I'm glad something good came from that night." Something good did come from that night. 2 cryptozoologists who care deeply about unknown species, even if we show that care in different ways. And maybe we're figuring out how to show that care together instead of separately. Final thoughts. The Owlman investigation taught me that growth isn't dramatic. It's not a single moment of realization that changes everything. It's hundreds of small choices: to consult instead of act alone, to protect instead of expose, to prioritize the creature's welfare over personal recognition. It's choosing to call Marion for advice, choosing to work with local researchers, choosing to write measured papers instead of sensational posts, choosing to be welcome instead of tolerated. I came to Cornwall testing whether my growth in New Jersey was real or performance. I left knowing it was real, but also knowing I had further to go. I came to Cornwall carrying 25 years of trauma from that night in the Adirondacks. I left understanding that Marion carries the same trauma, and that our different responses to it don't have to keep us apart. I came to Cornwall as a solo investigator trying to prove he'd changed. I left as someone Marion might actually trust again. That's not redemption. That's not reconciliation. But it's movement in the right direction. The Owlman is still in those woods, yellow eyes watching from the darkness. The mystery remains. The creature survives. And somewhere across the Atlantic, my twin sister is reading my reports, evaluating my work, deciding whether I've grown enough to be trusted. I think I have. But more importantly, I'm still growing. That's what Marion needed to see. Not perfection, but genuine, sustained effort to be better. Not a dramatic transformation, but consistent movement toward the person she always believed I could be. The Owlman helped me become that person. Now I just need to keep being him. Technical notes. For researchers. If you're investigating the Owlman or similar flying cryptids. Methodology. Work with local ornithological experts from the start. Understand the full range of known bird species in the area before claiming anything is unknown. Use proper audio and video equipment capable of capturing clear evidence. Conduct observations over extended periods rather than expecting immediate results. Respect local communities and their relationship with the phenomenon. Cultural considerations. Small villages have complex relationships with their local legends. Tourism can be destructive to both community and habitat. Always ask, what serves the creature best? Before releasing information. Build trust through consistent, respectful behavior. Remember you're a guest in someone else's home. Evidence standards. Ambiguous evidence should be presented ambiguously. Consult with experts before making claims. Publish in peer-reviewed journals when possible. Avoid sensational language even in informal communications. Let the evidence speak for itself without embellishment. Ethical framework. The creature's welfare comes before your career. Local community concerns are more important than your curiosity. Conservation is the primary goal. Documentation is secondary. Think 10 years ahead. What are the long-term consequences of your choices? When in doubt, choose protection over publicity. The most important lesson. Marion was right. She's been right all along. If you're fortunate enough to have someone like her in your life, someone who holds you accountable, who prioritizes ethics over ego, who understands what this work is really about, listen to them. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I didn't listen for years, and it cost me my partnership with the best cryptozoologist I know. Don't make the same mistake. Michael Thatcher, independent cryptozoologist. August 2024. The Owlman exists in the Mawnan Church woods. Something unusual, something remarkable, something that survived by remaining mysterious. I documented it carefully and kept it safe. That's not the work 12-year-old Michael thought he'd be doing. But it's the work 36-year-old Michael needed to do. Growth isn't dramatic. It's a series of small, right choices. Cornwall taught me that. Marion taught me that. And someday, maybe someday soon, we'll make those choices together instead of apart. Postscript. September 2024. One final update because it feels important. Marion called me yesterday. Not about methodology or research, just to talk. I read your Owlman report, she said. The published paper and the personal reflection. And I think you're ready. Not ready to work in the field together, that's still coming. but ready for me to tell you something I've been working on. What is it? I'm planning an investigation into the Dogman, Michigan and Wisconsin, possibly this fall. It's aggressive, potentially dangerous, similar to what we dealt with in 1999. I need backup, someone who understands the risks and can handle themselves. My heart rate picked up. You want me to come? I want you available if things go badly. Not as a partner, not yet, but as backup. Someone I can call if I need help. Someone who'll respond responsibly. Marion, of course. Anything you need. Always. There's someone else already involved, a guide named Marcus Running Bear. Good guy, experienced, but he's requesting that I bring additional support. Your name came up. He's heard about your recent work. Thinks you might be an asset. When do you need to know? No rush. The investigation is still in planning stages. But Michael, if you commit to this, you commit fully. No reckless behavior, no prioritizing footage over safety, no doing anything that puts people at risk. Clear? Crystal clear. You have my word. Good. I'll send you details as they develop. And Michael? Yeah. Thank you. For growing up. For doing the work right. For becoming someone I can trust again. After the call, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about 12-year-olds making promises to each other outside a tent, about 25 years of processing trauma separately, about the long road back to trust. Marion and I aren't fully reconciled. We're not partners yet, but we're getting there. And when she needs me, when she faces something dangerous and calls for backup, I'll be there. Not the old Michael who'd rush in recklessly. The new Michael who understands that protecting the people you love is more important than proving you're brave. The Owlman taught me that. Cornwall taught me that. And now, maybe, I'll get the chance to show Marion that the lesson stuck. Whatever's happening in Michigan and Wisconsin, whatever Marion is walking into, she won't face it alone. Not anymore. That's what twins do. We face the monsters together, just like we should have been doing all along. Michael Thatcher, independent cryptozoologist. September 2024. Marion is investigating the Dogman. She's asked me to be backup. Not partners yet, but trusted enough to call when things get dangerous. That's progress. That's everything. 25 years after that night in the Adirondacks, we're finally fighting the monsters together again. This time, we'll do it right.